Hello and welcome to Nuzlocke University. Today we're going to be talking about 5 easy ways you can get better at the Nuzlocke challenge. Now, I've said this before, but I think it's always a good idea to include this disclaimer at the start of these types of videos. I don't consider myself to be one of the best Nuzlockers in the world. I don't play super difficult ROM hacks or crazy, deathless rule set challenges, anything like that. I do love Nuzlockes, and I play a lot of them, usually with hardcore rules, but what I really enjoy is writing and talking about Nuzlockes. I have my own website, Nuzlocke University, where I write articles, tier lists, guides, tips, stuff like that about the Nuzlocke challenge, so check that out afterwards for more content like this. Anyways, with that said, let's get into the video. So the Nuzlocke challenge is a lot of fun, but it's also famously challenging for new players. And the first question that most new players ask after learning the rules and trying them out for the first time is, how do I get better at Nuzlockes? And that's the question that we're here to answer today. So here are 5 of the quickest ways for new or novice Nuzlockers to improve their skills and begin that long process of mastering the Nuzlocke challenge. And if you're an experienced Nuzlocker, I still think there's some good reminders in here for you too, so don't click off just yet. So number 0, it's a bonus tip if you will. We're going to talk a little bit about XP and how you should approach grinding in your Nuzlockes. Now, for most players who have experience with the Nuzlocke challenge, they use something called level caps, and we very commonly use what's called the rare candy clause to allow us to bring our Pokemon up to the appropriate level cap for that gym. I've made a whole other video about the rare candy debate, so you can check that out if you're interested. But I just bring that up to say that, if you're not using level caps and the rare candy clause, then the absolute number 1 tip, and for today it's going to be our bonus tip, is to grind Pokemon XP. Right? If you enter a battle under-leveled, you are doomed to fail. And the best thing that you can do to immediately get better at your Nuzlockes is just to level up all your Pokemon by 2 or 3 more levels. So anyways, let's get that out of the way first, and let's get into now our 5 tips for actually improving at Nuzlockes beyond just increasing the level of your Pokemon. So, tip 1 is to use online resources to research tough sections of the game before you go into a battle. So the first thing you can do to get better at Nuzlockes is just to research and improve your knowledge of the game. Even if you've never played a Nuzlocke before, or if you're trying a certain version of Pokemon for the first time, you can give yourself a huge advantage by using online databases like Cerebi or Bulbapedia to research the teams of challenging gym leaders or trainers before you go into those fights. This way, you can avoid being surprised by tricky moves on your opponent's Pokemon, and you can build your team to be ready for those tough challenges that you'll face. You can also look up other things like the locations of wild Pokemon to help you find the best encounters, as well as to see where the important TMs and other items can be found, and both of these things can help give you an edge and help you build a strong and balanced team. I think some players when they're getting started feel kind of guilty about doing this, and I really don't think they should. I mean, some people choose to play Nuzlockes blind, and that is absolutely a valid way to play through a game to make it harder for yourself. But if you're new or you're trying to get better at Nuzlockes, then I think there is absolutely no shame in doing some research, making sure you know what you're going into in every battle. And I think if you're trying to get better, you should be using all the tools at your disposal to help you improve. And the number 1 thing you can do to help yourself improve is to increase your knowledge of the game you're playing. So that's tip number 1, research the battles before you go into them. Now, number 2 is one of the classic mantras of the Nuzlocke community, and that is play around the crit. Or to expand on that a little bit, you should expect critical hits and other forms of bad luck, and you should prepare for them. So, losing a Pokemon to a poorly timed critical hit is an experience that pretty much every Nuzlocker can relate to, and new players have a tendency to write these deaths off as bad luck. But the truth is that with smart play, these are almost always preventable. If you have a good plan going into every battle, you should never need to rely on dodging crits to win. So how do we avoid losing Pokemon to critical hits and other bad luck? How do we actually do this? Well, we can't actually stop them from happening, so what we have to do is factor them into our plans and play around them so that we can limit their impact when they do happen. The simplest way to do this is by just always assuming the worst case scenario. Assume that your opponent's attack is going to critically hit, assume your attack is going to miss, assume you'll hit yourself in confusion, and so on, and always consider that and let it guide your decisions. If a critical hit is going to knock out your Pokemon, switch out. If you can't afford to miss an attack, you need to avoid moves with low accuracy. The general rule to remember here, the little mnemonic you can use, is if in doubt, switch out. Because honestly, the truth is that over a long challenge like the Nuzlocke, critical hits aren't bad luck. They are guaranteed to happen eventually, and good players will play around them and they'll factor them into their game plan. So that's tip number 2, is to expect critical hits, plan for them, and play around them. Now tip number 3 expands on this a little bit, and it is to end battles as quickly as possible whenever you can. So we've just finished talking about how you should expect bad luck and prepare for it, but do you know how you can limit the amount of bad luck that you're going to face in the first place? It's just to fight shorter battles. So how do we do that, right? I mean, every trainer has a certain number of Pokemon, we can't reduce that. Well, think about this. If a battle lasts 5 turns, that's 5 chances for your opponent to land a critical hit, inflict a random status condition, dodge your attacks, something like that. But if that battle instead lasts 10 turns, they get twice as many chances to screw you over with bad luck. That's double the opportunities for bad luck to go against you, and over the course of hundreds of battles throughout your Nuzlocke, that adds up to a lot more bad rolls of the dice. Often, for novice players, battles will last longer than they really need to because we overthink. We get excited, we watch people like Heechal, Drax, Flygon HG who are doing these super challenging runs. We watch them do these fancy pivots, these clever AI manipulations, and then we bring that back to our own runs and we end up overcomplicating things, right? Sometimes we're looking for this crazy pivot play where we go through 3 different Pokemon to bring in the perfect tech to 3-hit KO our opponent's Pokemon safely. When in reality, the safest play would just be to put in our starter and click Surf or Flamethrower 5 times. Right? Because this ends the fight quickly and simply, which means less turns for bad RNG to rear its ugly head. So that's tip number 3. Whenever you can, end battles as quickly as possible. Don't overthink things. Now, for tip number 4, we're kind of getting away from in-battle improvements, and we're going to talk more about the wider, bigger strategy of your Nuzlocke overall. And so, number 4 is that the order of your encounters matters. Now this only applies if you're using the duplicates clause, and if you don't know what duplicates clause is, I'll put a little reminder on screen. But since our recent Nuzlocke survey showed that 95% of players do use the dupes clause, I feel pretty comfortable including this. So why does it matter what order that you visit the different routes, catch your Pokemon? Well, if you're using the dupes clause, by visiting certain routes and catching certain Pokemon first, you can actually remove those Pokemon from the encounter pool on other routes, which makes it more likely, or sometimes even guaranteed, that you'll find a specific Pokemon that you want on a later route. So let's look at an example to explain this a little better. So one really good example is in Pokemon Platinum, where one of the game's best encounters, Gible, which evolves into Garchomp of course, can be encountered in the Wayward Cave B1F. Now, Gible only has a 20% chance of appearing, so it's not very likely that you'll get it if you just run into Wayward Cave. But if the player waits to enter the cave until they've already caught all the other 4 possible encounters in the other areas, which is Bronzor, Geodude, Onix, and Zubat, then at that point Gible is the only valid encounter left, and you now have a guaranteed chance to add it to your team. Now, this doesn't just apply to Pokemon Platinum, all the games are full of tricks like this, which a smart Nuzlocker can use to give themselves better odds of finding and catching the best Pokemon for your team. So while the first 3 tips were kind of focused on how you can improve your decision-making in battle, one of the things you can do to improve even more is to go into battle with better Pokemon, and this strategy, which we call encounter routing, is the easiest way to do that. And this goes along with our first tip, which is to do more research, because the only way that a new player knows which order they need to visit the routes in is if they research which Pokemon appear where, and then you can make a plan for how you are going to route your encounters to guarantee that you'll be able to add the strongest Pokemon to your team. And finally, our last tip for today, number 5, is to have a backup plan for every major battle. So if you're a good Nuzlocker, you're going to enter every battle with a plan. But then what happens if that plan gets derailed by a badly timed critical hit, a misplay, or some other unexpected turn of events that you didn't anticipate? Well, in these cases, having a backup plan can be the difference between losing 1 or 2 Pokemon and wiping the battle completely. So before every battle, it's important that you take a look at your available Pokemon, review what your plan is for that gym, or team leader, or whatever difficult fight you're going into, and ask yourself these 2 questions. Number 1, how could this plan possibly fail? And number 2, if it does fail, what is my backup plan? So there's lots of different options here. Your backup plan might be a second Pokemon with a type advantage who can take over in case something happens to the Pokemon that you thought you'd sweep with. Maybe it's stalling an opponent with Leech Seed and status conditions if you can't knock it out quickly. I mean, the exact plan will be different for every battle, but it's really important that before any dangerous fight, you spend some time thinking about what you'll do if things start to go sideways. This is not only helpful because it gives you, obviously, a backup in case things go poorly, but it also helps you to stay calm and avoid panic during the battle, and can really save you from making poor decisions and having an early wipe. As a beginner, or as a novice, you won't always play perfectly, but by having a solid backup plan, you can limit the impact of your mistakes and give yourself the best possible chance of succeeding even when things don't go as planned. So there you go. That covers 5 basic tips that any Nuzlocker can use to improve their Nuzlocke skills. I think this will be super useful for beginner and novice players, and even for more experienced players. I think this is a good reminder of some of the things that we should always be keeping in mind. Now, there's obviously a lot more that we could talk about. We may make another video in the future talking about pivoting, about more advanced repel manipulation and encounter routing, or even about manipulating trainer AI, which is a valuable skill in really high difficulty ROM hacks and other Nuzlockes like that. But for today, I think we'll leave it here. So thank you everybody for listening. If you're interested in more Nuzlocke content like tier lists, guides, articles, think pieces, then check out my website, Nuzlocke University. I'll leave a link in the description. If you have any other tips that you think would be helpful for new or novice Nuzlockers, please share them in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day and happy Nuzlocking!